Adjustment meeting. I'd like to call to order the Thursday, September 24th, 2015 Board of Adjustment meeting. Roll call, please.
Johnson,
Here.
McGuire.
Here.
Dolly.
Here.
Shriver.
Here.
Stein is absent. Stonebarger. Here. Albertson. Here. Bill Johnson is absent. Dennis Arnold is absent. We have a quorum.
And Mark Stein will be late. He has a United Way meeting when he gets here. If they could make a note that he'll be here. First item on the agenda is the approval of the 9/19/2015 minutes. Could I get a motion and a second?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Stonebarger. Second by Mr. McGuire. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Second item on the agenda is that applicant Prime Site Center LLC, permit number 16367, seeks a conditional use to construct and operate a car wash in the C3 Highway Commercial District at 102 9th Street Southeast. Ken?
All right. Applicant seeks conditional use approval to construct and operate a car wash in the C3 Highway Commercial District pursuant to 21-2803 of the zoning ordinance and contingent upon compliance with the specific rules governing individual conditional uses and other conditions the board may deem necessary. Car wash, automatic car wash is a listed conditional use in the C3 zone. The property is also subject to compliance with the Gateway Overlay District, off-street parking loading requirements, landscape and lighting standards, and outdoor sign and advertising. The board must determine satisfactory provisions and arrangement has been made concerned. The property is also in the shallow aquifer, and it's meeting those requirements, that's all right. The property lacks the standard boulevard requirements and infrastructure, but we do have a landscape plan, and as condition of the thing, they have not requested any variance to that. All landscape requirements will be met. So basically, they're just gonna go and, why don't you give me the overhead then for a second?
Ken, can you point out, is it Poncet or Poinsett Street there?
Point out.
There's a street in the edition we have that I'm looking at. Go to the next page.
Go to the next page.
You see it, don't you? Is on the Austin survey.
Over here?
I don't know.
Well, this is dedicated for future street over on this end here.
Okay, and that has nothing to do with this.
That has nothing to
Okay,
do with it today. Right
okay,
now, we got Willow Creek Drive,
Gotcha.
we got 19.
okay. I don't know why that was included in there.
It's blocking my picture. There we go. Of course, these two buildings are existing, as you already see there. The proposed car wash is this structure here. They're also gonna do an addition on this building that does need no special conditions. It meets all the requirements, doesn't have to come before you. Again, this could get tweaked a little bit as to how it actually sits here, but in general, this is gonna be it is. The proposal is for the cars to come on this end, circle around and come back through and go back out the existing same way, so. Again, this is just conditional use.
Is it all one lot?
This is all one parcel, yep.
And we can have three separate buildings like that, all on one
We
lot?
have 7, 8, 9, 10 of those.
So it's not an issue
No,
whatsoever?
you can have as
Okay.
many.
Okay, with that, I'll open the public hearing if anyone's here to speak on behalf or against the conditional use. Ken, the reason this is a conditional use is because it's just one of those listed things that we like to take a peek at before it's finished.
Correct.
My concerns on it were which direction are those garage doors facing? We don't like them facing the street, they're
These three
facing
are
the
all
back,
three to the
correct?
rear, yep.
My second issue was how many cars can you fit on the lot, so we're not blocking traffic out in the road, and the way that diagram looks is they're entering from that side and snaking them around the back of the building anyway.
You can stack quite a few, yep.
The frontage of the building, from the pictures I saw, it was in similar construction material of the two buildings to the east. What was emailed to me looked that way. So it seems to conform with the area. And that's the back side there we're seeing
That'd
where
be
it
the
says
back
first
side.
choice there.
And, yeah, this would be your front here. You got your two ends. Again, this could be tweaked a little bit, but this is the general concept of what they're trying to achieve.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It was public notice, and I had no comments pro or con, so.
Okay. Seeing no one to speak, I'll close the public hearing. Ask for a motion and second for discussion. Go ahead.
Ken, before we do that, on this
first drawing that you had up there.
Yep.
What's the significance of the red circles with the blue line in them?
Those are detention ponds.
Those are detention ponds? Okay. And also too, when you had the, this version with the Marvid second edition up there, it looks like they took, some of the portion of lot 2, Willow Creek, and now lot 2 Willow Creek Plaza is only like, what, 72, 73 feet wide? Is that,
Well, when this all came through here, we did some horse trading along here, again, to get this access over on this side over here. They actually dedicated that to that one time. We gave them a little bit of this H lot over here at that time to make it all work out in the long run.
so, but
We
just,
be in the city?
Correct.
just north of that, is that just a 72-foot wide lot now?
Oh, I'll go back to this one.
Because is that gonna be a substandard lot in the future
Go
then?
back to the screen. No, what you have here is this is all, the next Pat Gar edition.
Okay.
So you got a proposed future roadway that's gonna go here and here and here. And then these are their lots. I believe this one's probably just gonna be a park. These are two are slated to be commercial.
Now, is that along 19th Street there, is all one lot, or is that two lots? Zoom in a little bit, if you could. Okay, now go over to 19th Street. What we have on this drawing here, it looks like it's only a 72-foot wide lot there, just directly to the north, beneath those hay bales or whatever. But if it's a full-size lot, that's fine. I was just wondering.
Yeah, and you might be seeing that this is a huge storm drain easement through here.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's what you're, I'm not finding the same drawing you're looking at. I apologize.
Okay.
I think that's what it is. It looks like it might be plotting out that stormwater easement.
All right, never mind.
All right, now close the public hearing, ask for a motion and a second for discussion. So move, motion by Mr. Albertson, second by Ms. Johnson. Any other discussion? Any questions for anyone? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item 3 on the agenda is an applicant, Ben Peterson, conditional use, or permit number 16365, seeks a conditional use and appeals zoning condition for a structure in a C1 commercial district, 215 First Avenue Southwest. Ken, this is one that it's a residential structure in a commercial zone, I assume.
Yeah, and this is right next to one we just did a week ago. And as the board, we've already made a recommendation to planning to possibly consider rezoning that whole area.
To the R2A area.
Yep.
This is one so that they can rebuild in the event of a loss, so it can be
That's
financed.
exactly what it is for free financing. So pursuant to the conditional use 212403, applicant seeks the ability in the event of a casualty to rebuild the existing non-conforming structure, single-family dwelling in the C1 Community Commercial District, contingent upon specific rules and other conditions. Currently, applicant terms of the following section of the zone, 2104, buildings destroyed by casualty accident cannot be rebuilt. Again, this is basically what we've all talked to, getting down, well, that's what it just get down to, is a refinance for that same area.
And this is an area we've established that we'd like to rezone to R2A since
Yeah,
it's
we'd
all
already
being
like to
used as
consider that, yeah.
residential now. I'm not-
Basically, everything on this side of the block is a residential, more residential use than the commercial use, so.
Okay, we'll
You've already
cover that.
directed us to do that.
Okay, all right. With that, I'll open the public hearing if anyone's here to speak on behalf or against the
And again,
condition.
it was public notice, and nobody has come pro or con to us about it.
Okay. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, ask for a motion and a second for discussion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. McGuire, second by Mr. Albertson. Any discussion or any questions on it? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Fourth item on the agenda is applicant David Johnson doing business as Big Sioux Financial. Permit number 16366 seeks a conditional use approval to build a storage garage in a C1 zone at 11 North Broadway.
Again, this is application 16366, conditional use request and appeal. Again, David Johnson, DBA Big Sioux Financial. Applicant seeks conditional use approval to construct a 1,810 square foot, 25 by 76 storage unit consisting of 1,410 square feet area with 4 undivided vehicle stalls, 1 235 square foot area, and 1 165 foot vestibule on a 1,900 square foot substandard non-conforming subdivision located in the C1 Commercial Community District. Storage units are listed conditional use in the C1 zone. So basically what Dave is wanting to do is acquire this portion of the land. If you're familiar with Dave, he has this corner, this apartment over here, of which he's redone. I'm sure most everybody in town is aware of that. And he was trying to find some land that'd be close enough, I suppose, so people in the wintertime, or if they went on a trip or something, they could actually put their car and have it to go. This is a C1 zone district. It's a 0 lot line setback. The lot as itself is a platted lot, has a buildable right. The subdivision of that lot somewhat is a little bit shady. That's the variance. You guys are not shady, but out of the ordinary. And that's what the variance request is for. Personally, I think it's a good use of the lot.
Do we have any, when I first saw it in 12 years, this is the first time I've seen one of these come up. Are there other areas where we actually have, I'll call it a garage, not necessarily a storage unit? I mean, that's what it is, but.
This is in effect is a garage, yes.
Yeah, and it's a garage, and we can't limit it to a certain property. I imagine there's other spots that we haven't seen before in the uptown area where there are garages in the C1 that are.
Yeah, there's some only places and everything already existing uptown that has happened and hasn't had to come back to you for that specifically because it was an accessory use to the primary structure already.
They're not replatting it, so this is its own lot of any sort. So basically that the 175 feet or whatever, they had 165 feet. That lot has a building right. You build on this end of it. Is there still a building right on the rest of that lot then?
That, they would have to come back to you to build on it
Again.
again. Because now that parcel being subdivided into smaller than a original platted lot would have to come before the board for that variance.
Ken, if we approve this, how many parking spaces, uptown parking spaces, do you feel we will lose? Because it looks
Well,
like if we
they're
put-
not uptown parking spaces. They're actually Mr. York's parking spaces over here. He'll lose probably 4 spots.
Well,
It's privately owned. It's not city property.
and there'll still be parking behind the red.
Right, yeah, these spots that you see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, whatever, will still remain. And if I,
Aesthetically, you've looked at the building material that's going to be used, and you're satisfied with that also?
well, that's just, once you guys give it approval, we'll take care of that part after the
Okay.
fact, so.
That's one of the
No use in
concerns I have.
discussing it unless it gets approved, so,
And that'll go through your office?
yes.
Any question? With that, I'll open the public hearing if anyone's here to speak on behalf or against the permit.
Dave is here, I think if you have a question for him.
Dave, which way are the doors going to face? West or north or south?
It would be at an angle to the north.
Easterly.
Similar to where that car's parked inside the red box?
Yeah.
Yep.
Ken, I see there's somebody has a question. If you could have them come up to the mic, state their name, and ask their question for the record.
Just pull that chair over here, like.
Hi, my name is Bob Hoover. I'm an uptown businessman for the last 20 years. And I guess I've got a couple of questions for Dave. Number one is, as is built, will it continue or will it be built according to the standards that we currently have in the uptown area with the preservation of the historic look? Because they've been pushing that on us for the last 15 years as to anything we do to make sure that it does fit within that historic look. Second question I basically have for Mr. Johnson is that just the parking areas on the alleyway there, or does that move into the area in which Dugan has parking for his employees, tenants, and for his own vehicles?
This has nothing to do with Dugan's property whatsoever.
Okay, that's, because that was a primary concern of mine, because originally when it come out, it was said that that was going to be built on the Dugan property, which does affect every business along the Broadway area. And looking at what I've seen here, there right now, I'll be honest with you, Mr. Johnson, I don't find any major problems with that. Again, I'd like to see development in the uptown area, which you've done a great job on your property over in the old shoe building. And rather than just have the signs and the boats and the things that are parked out there on the alley, it would be nice to have a building out there. The only thing is how it would appear to be, I guess.
Well,
more
here's a
than
rough
anything right
artist
now.
concept of what it might look like. Again, this isn't tied in stone yet, but I think it'd be very befitting of the
If it
area.
were brick and something like that that would fit along there, then I'll be honest with you, I don't have a problem whatsoever with it.
Doesn't necessarily have to be brick, but the stucco look or whatever.
I've got an estimate as to building that with concrete block, and it's over 100,000. And so it'll be very difficult. I would have to, I'd be happy to come back in regard to exactly what it would be built with. But Dave Todd did that without a lot of direction from me.
And within the uptown district of wanting to do that, that's a perception that we'd like. It's not a requirement by any code or ordinance or anything else.
And that's
so.
handled through your office. When the building permit gets pulled, you'll
Right,
take a
but
look
for me,
to
all
make
he's
sure.
really gotta do is meet the code requirements for the building in that position, so. But I'm sure Dave will do something that'll look nice to the area.
Thank you. Anyone else speak in the open? Seeing none, I'll close the open, ask for a motion and a second for discussion.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Dolly, second by Mr. McGuire. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any old business, Ken?
And thank you.
Not for me, thank you.
Need a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Dolly, second by Mrs. Johnson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Let me know when you're ready, Jeff.
Go ahead, Pat.
I'd like to call to order the Thursday, September 24th, 2015 Waterstown City Plan Commission. Roll call, please.
Johnson,
Here.
McGuire. Here. Dolly.
Here.
Shriver.
Here.
Stein is absent. Stonebarger.
Here.
Council Liaison Albertson. Arnold is absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Again, Mr. Stein will be here. We're moving faster for him. He's got a meeting. He'll be here. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. I need a motion and a second. Motion by Mrs. Johnson, second by Mr. Dolly. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Second item on the agenda is the approval of the August 20th, 2015 minutes. Motion by Mr. Stonebarger, second by Mr. McGuire. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Third item on the agenda is the Ed Tom addition rezoning.
Okay. All right, I have that highlighted on the screen. Let me just turn on our zoning real quick. This property, as you can see highlighted in blue, is currently zoned C3. And that property was annexed and zoned in April of 2010. Now the petitioner is requesting his property be rezoned to R3 multifamily residential. He would like to do this for refinancing purposes, and in case the house were ever to burn down, he'd be able to rebuild it. As you can see from the zoning map, it's currently adjacent to county in the north, R3 to the east and west, and C3 to the south. This particular lot is almost 3 acres and meets all of the R3 requirements. And our comprehensive land use plan has this area designated as economic development site mixed uses. And mixed uses means that it's appropriate location for either commercial or multifamily development, so either zone would fit that. The applicant is here if you'd like to talk to him, but with that, I'll let
Can you point on the lots to there's some development to the back of that already, correct? Aren't there a couple twin homes or something?
Yeah, this piece right here, was purchased and went through the preliminary plan and has started to develop. You can see there's construction going on underneath this picture of some fourplexes and,
And that was one of the roads that
Yep.
that doesn't actually meet up there. Okay, and that's a recent photograph there.
yeah, it's about a
Okay.
little over a year old now, but.
All right. With that, I'll open the open the public hearing if anyone's here to speak on behalf of the rezone or against the rezone. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, ask for a motion and a second for discussion.
Make motion approved.
Motion by Mr. McGuire, second by Mr. Dolly. Any concern? I kind of looked, you got R3 behind it, R3 across the street. As far as
The only concern I would have would be another
another
half a
street. Yeah, it'd be nice to see that area all developed together so we could match up streets, but we'll find out. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Fourth item on the agenda is the Eastwoods 18th Edition annexation and zoning.
Just a second. Okay. I have the map up right here. It's a petition to annex and zone this piece right here, to annex it and zone it R1, single-family residential. This piece was annexed in March. I had to draw it in because our map hasn't been updated. But this piece was annexed in March when the petitioners came forward with annexation and preliminary plan. And at that time, the annexation was approved, but the preliminary plan needed to be modified. And I'd just like the record to show that Stein has arrived. But the annexation was originally approved because this was going to be phase 1 of the Eastwoods 18th development. But then since their preliminary plan was still in the works and it eventually came back to you guys and was approved in June, their new phase 1 goes out and up to connect to 12th Avenue. And because of this, they're requesting more property to be annexed and zoned. The area will be able to meet all of the R1 requirements and is consistent with the approved preliminary plan. And the comprehensive land use plan has this area designated as residential development site. And if you have any other questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Jeff. Two parts of this. The first part will be annexation. The second part is zoning. I know John has a question. I did too. As far as their original preliminary plan, both of these parcels were part of it?
The preliminary plan covers this whole area right here, and it was to be done in 4 phases.
On both sides? I'm going to say on the right. So where your pointer is there, did it include that area all the way
Yes.
down to there?
Yep.
Okay.
All of this area, and it was to be done in 4 phases. And phase 1 is a 30 lot development, which will 10th Street will come out to 27th Street, and then 27th Street will go up to 12th Avenue, and then there'll be lots developed on both sides of those streets. And then phase 2 of the development was over in this area in the 28th Street area, and that included more residential developments along with the park dedication and stormwater retention areas. And then phase 3 and 4 were both on the south portions of the property. So this is consistent with phase 1 of the development.
So in this case, they want to annex in a little bit more property to include it in phase 1 when it wasn't originally included in it?
It's included in the approved preliminary plan. What happened is in March, they had a different preliminary plan, and that had phase 1 being just this
Okay.
square. And then since that plan got modified and approved in June, it included more area. And so now they're annexing more area just to match what the approved
It
preliminary
allows
plan
them to
is.
loop that road too,
Yep.
I assume.
Correct. The discussion that we had too was wanting to have that loop continue up.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
All right, thank you.
So Jeff, I guess when we originally saw the entire plot,
Yeah.
it included parkland for the entire area, not just the.
Yep, and that's
That's
over
all.
here on the, what will be the east side of 28th Street.
So we're not talking about annexing any more land than what was annexed at that time, or
Yeah. And
plotted on that time.
I can pull up that preliminary plan.
So in that preliminary plan, there's a park dedication requirement, and that's met in the larger plan. So as they bring in these smaller pieces as it goes, it doesn't add to that, correct?
Correct. Alright. Once this opens, this was the approved preliminary plan from the June meeting. And here's a phasing map right here. And this green is phase one of the development. And this portion right here is the portion that's requesting to be annexed, and that's consistent with phase one. This red area is phase two of the development. This big block right here is the park dedication, as well as the drainage area. And then blue is phase three, and purple is phase four of the development.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll close the public hearing. 2 items to vote on. The first item is we'll vote on the annexation. The second item we'll vote on the zoning. I'd ask for a motion and a second for Resolution 215-36, the annexation. Motion by Mr. Dolly, second by Mr. McGuire. Any further discussion on the annexation? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Second vote is Resolution 2015-37. The zoning is R1, single-family residential. Need a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Mr. McGuire, second by Mr. Dolly. Any further discussion on the zoning, or I'm sorry, the zoning? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Fifth item on the agenda is Stony Point Third Edition preliminary plan.
Okay. This has been before you guys before. We have received a new plan for this meeting, and I will go over the changes to this plan as compared to the last plan, and then I'll let you guys dive into it. They changed the lot layout slightly, where they had more lots on the bottom right here. It was 5. They've made the lots a little bit bigger to make it 3, and they had a couple of skinnier lots up top that they've combined due to you guys' width concerns. Also, they've modified the sidewalk that goes through Stony Point Third Edition. Before it came and it just crossed right here. Now it goes up and it hugs the road all the way through the development. And this was before proposed to be a trail or sidewalk, and it was going to be paved and have utilities in it. They've modified that so this doesn't need to be paved anymore, and you won't have a manhole utility in it. And then also, they've changed the side. Whoops, didn't mean to change pages there. They changed the sidewalk adjacent to the portion that's in Prairie Hills development. They've moved this sidewalk to an easement that's right here on the, instead of right adjacent to the road. They try to do this to accommodate more buildable area in this lot. So those are the changes from the previous plan. If you have any questions, I'll answer them, or else I'll let you guys dive into it.
They're also proposing to narrow a road again, right?
It's still the 66-foot right-of-way. We have typical sections of what they would like to do. Zoom in on this real quick.
At the last meeting, we agreed it should be a 37-foot
Oh,
wide road, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah. They're showing a 30-foot wide road, and then there won't be curb and gutter on that. It'll be the grass slopes off of that with the 6-foot sidewalk on one side. So at the last meeting, they were they had 26-foot wide roads shown, and now this one they have 30-foot.
Yeah, at the last
Yep.
meeting, we agreed on sidewalk, 4-foot sidewalk on both sides and a 37-foot wide road. And those are changes that they want to come back and revisit.
Correct.
Before I open the public hearing, what happened is after we went through this the first time, we brought it back the second time, we passed a resolution with 20 items on it, And I talked to a few people and kind of thought, well, boy, that's a pretty heavy resolution with 20 things in a public hearing where we say this is what we want. I didn't feel they got to rebut some of those resolutions adequately or in what I would say to my, I don't want to say specifications, but to my satisfaction. So I actually met with those guys and said, well, I thought it went pretty well. They didn't think it went very well. And I said, well, here's the areas that I thought went well. Here's the areas I thought could have gone better. And we had the areas that we talked about were, I didn't feel that they adequately provided to us that those were real rural lots, and so I'd made a recommendation that if we want it to have a rural effect, they have to be bigger lots, and they agreed with that. As far as the sidewalks on both sides, we were okay with a trail going through there until the 11th hour when we realized that the northern addition up there was required to put sidewalks. When I was at the meeting with them, they said the owners of the northern addition would prefer a trail over sidewalks. And I said, well, that's something that I think the board would possibly reconsider, because it wasn't that we were dead set on sidewalks on both sides of the roads. It was that we have sidewalks to the south and the north. Why wouldn't we hook them in the middle? The road size, I looked and said, if you want a smaller road, you have to explain why that smaller road is as good, if not better, than a wider road, and how a 37-foot wide road could be as functional as a 30-foot wide road. And I think they'll explain that. The other thing was, in that wetland in Block 3, in order to appease the Hidden Valley people, because that is a wetland, Game Fish and Parks, DENR, in the city, I'd propose that they gift that property to the city so the city could then lease the supervision of that area in lieu of park dedication, which would have to be approved by the park board yet. And they were okay with that. And then where the channel access was the fifth area that we approved. I kind of went through so fast I didn't quite catch it. Our motion said that we recommend that the city council consider a north access. I feel that we have to give the city council a finished product, not a recommendation that they recommend. So we met back with them, and then I've met with some of the people from Hidden Valley, and I've met with Conda Williams on the other side, and I just felt it's a pretty large project. In visiting with Shane, the steps that we take, we go from a concept plan to a preliminary plan, but it's really not a preliminary plan, it's a final plan, it's a master plan. We use those three terms loosely amongst each other, and I thought, well, let's just take another look. Is there a way we can make this thing work that would appease everybody? So that's why we're back here where we are now. With that, I'll open the public hearing if anybody is here to speak on behalf or against the proposal. Bob, you're engineer here? I didn't see you standing there. The one thing that struck me is on the road. We like to say, well, it's a rural section road, it's an urban section road. We don't have anywhere in our ordinance that defines a rural section road. So it's up to this board to decide whether this seems rural or not. I talked to Rod a little bit, and Jeff, you can weigh in because I probably talked to you the most on this. After that meeting, I said, how many feet is it between curb to curb on a 37-foot road? And it was 37 feet back of curb, front of curb to front of curb, right?
Correct.
Did you bring a diagram on that at all? On the what road width? My angle on it was, does 37 equal 30? Short of Common Core, the answer would be no, but with Common Core, it might be yes. So what I talked to Jeff about is that if we went curb and gutter, that's the diagram to the south. If you go from the front of the curb to the front of the curb, you got 37 feet. If you park a car on each side of the road, how many feet is door handle to door handle? And with a 7-foot vehicle, which Jeff measured some vehicles and said this is an F-350 pickup is 7 feet inside, door. So if we park those on each side of the road, we have 23 feet between vehicles. So that's how much room is to pass. And the reason that came up is when the people from Hidden Valley said, we have a 26-foot road and it's not big enough. Well, if I have a 26-foot road and I have two cars, assuming each car can get halfway off the road, I've got 19 feet from door handle to door handle, and that wasn't big enough. So here we go curb to curb, we got 23 feet between, we got 4 more feet
I
and
would
in a
beg to
common
differ
road.
on that. First off, if you've got a 7-foot wide vehicle, you're not gonna be parking on the curb or whatever. You're gonna have half a foot on this side and half a foot on this
Okay,
side.
so I'll give you that. So
8
we'll go
foot.
22 feet
8
between.
foot, so it's 16 foot. Take off a 30-foot road, you got 14 feet. to
No,
drive.
hold on a
Or-
second. Go 37 feet minus, how wide did you
No,
say?
I'm talking about your 30-foot wide street.
I'm not that far yet.
Okay, well, if you have a 37-foot
Right.
wide street.
So
you
if,
take off your 16 feet, you got 21 feet to drive. So you got
Between vehicles.
10-foot lane on either side, so you
Okay.
still have 2-lane traffic. We have a commercial zone up there. We have an
Mhm.
R3 area up there that they can put 15 units in each lot, so that's 30 units. There's gonna be a lot of traffic going in and out of there. If you have a 30-foot wide street and you have 8 foot on either side, that's 16, so you.
no, you have a 30-foot street with no curb. The assumption is,
You
and,
don't have a curb on the 37-foot wide either.
Yeah, you do.
People are not
Yeah, you're
gonna be
right
parking
there.
on the grass, they're gonna be parking on the asphalt.
well,
And
I'd
that's
beg
what
to
they-
differ on that.
That's what they do in Hidden Valley, and that's why they can't get through.
Not Hidden Valley, my question was, as I finish, on a 30-foot road, assuming that you can prove to us the slope of these ditches that a car, like the rest of South Lake Drive, you can pull your car halfway off, one tire onto the shoulder. If you can do that on a 30-foot road, and I'll use your 8-foot vehicles, so now you've got 8 feet of vehicle, you got a 30-foot road, you got 22 feet between them. That's a foot more than if you have more room. If you used a 37-foot road minus 16 feet, you're down to 19 feet in between them. If you use a 30-foot road that you can get vehicles off, one half of the vehicle off on each side, you have more room in between. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to say, start it backwards. Tell me how many feet we have on a standard city road. How many feet do we have between door handles? Now start with that, and assuming you can park on the shoulder half of your vehicle, half of each vehicle on each side, how far do you have? Well, when I talked to them, they said it's a 4-to-1 slope in the ditch. Are there any ditches that are so steep that vehicles couldn't park partially onto their shoulder? And their answer was no. Actually, we probably have big enough ditches based on the design, just like in Hidden Valley, you can pull off further onto the road. And then, so my question was, is a 30-foot road without curb and gutter, will that give us the same amount of room in between cars as a 37-foot road with curb and gutter? Because with curb and gutter, you're not going to get off the pavement.
We specified a 37-foot wide road, we do not specify curb and gutter.
We specified curb and gutter,
No, we didn't.
did we?
I have,
No, we had a grass ditch for drainage.
Just for
If
clarification,
you had a 30-foot wide road, you're expecting people to park in the dirt or the mud or whatever, and I'm sorry, I don't think they're gonna do
Well,
that.
much like the rest of the lake, that could you get off in Hidden Valley? Could you get one tire off the side of the road?
our resolution, from last month stated Stony Point, 3rd edition, shall be required to have 37-foot wide streets.
Okay, so without the curb and gutter. So I still look and go back is, can you get in a 30-foot road, could you get the same amount of usability between vehicles as you could on a road in town? In an R3 district, C1 district, doesn't matter what district's it in, we use a 37-foot road with curb and gutter, which gives you basically 19, 20 feet in between. So that was our take when they came back and said they still weren't comfortable with the road because they thought it was wider than what they liked. They thought it would be much wider than what they cared, much like the road in Prairie Hills. And Dennis isn't here, but he'll be the first one to tell you that he feels that road is wider than what's necessary down there. Slope of the ditch, I asked you to explain on most of that area, what kind of slope in that ditch do
Well,
you
we're
have?
looking at an 8-to-1 on the, next to the roadway there. That's a 12% slope, basically, and your crown is 3%, so you really only got a differential of
of about 8% between the two areas. And it's pretty easy to get out and park on that and not fall over like you do on a 4-to-1 slope. So this is a relatively flat, and that was a design consideration that we used here. So, and then it's also be able to, you can walk on that slope pretty easily and be able to handle the traffic as well between the shoulders there, the paved shoulders, and give you adequate room for that, so.
Shane, you were in on the meeting. As far as road widths, what was your thought on?
Well, for a couple of clarifications, our 37-foot wide street does typically include curb and gutter. So essentially, you take that curb and gutter off, and it gets really close to this 30-foot section that's proposed. So the pavement width is essentially the same as the 37-foot wide road, give or take a foot, I think. I think it's...
Say that again.
So a 37-foot wide road, that's face a curb to face a curb. Well, the gutter pan is 2 feet wide on our typical curb section. So this asphalt at 30 foot wide is essentially the same width as the asphalt in that 37-foot road. So I want that to be clear, that the asphalt footprint here is very close to what a 37-foot road would have. And I
So-
think that's the point you were trying to make. I just don't
Yeah, so
know
if we
that
say a
that-
37-foot road without curb and gutter, we're putting a lot more asphalt down than we would in a 37-foot
You're
road with
making
curb
it
and
as
gutter.
wide
Put
as
more
the
asphalt
back.
down, but you're putting less concrete.
But then, the other point I wanted to make is one of the discussions that we had in the previous meeting was we did talk about potentially restricting parking on one side of the road. And we haven't talked about that tonight, and I don't know if that helps appease this discussion or not, but that's something that I think should be weighed into this discussion as a potential compromise if this does go forward without curb and gutter and so forth.
If I might, if you drive over Green Bay or Wisconsin and you go over in any of those areas, they'll have roads like this with a gentle slope all over the place. And the population is I mean, lots, way more dense than what we're talking about here. But it's because of the gentle ditch that I even caution to use the word ditch, because you're at an 8-to-1 slope. It's a very gentle area, and if you drive around that area, most of the area, rural sections are like this. They're getting away from the curb and gutter. They're getting away from the larger streets, based from both from a water standpoint and from everything else, and go into a smaller section of a road with a gentle slope.
I've driven on some of those roads, and who's supposed to maintain it when the asphalt ends and you end up with a gully that's been washed out? And that's gonna be the city to go back there and have to keep putting the dirt back in there because it's washing out?
Well, even those slopes from a steepness, I mean, they're designed to, when you have like the driveways and otherwise, will slow the water and actually retain water and hold it back so that you don't get the big washouts. Second thing is it'll all be covered in grass, planted and,
State your name for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bob Drake.
That came up in that,
Sorry.
in some discussions we've had also, Shane, is, the advantage of the fact that there's no curb and gutter, the thought of a sidewalk on a larger side. A normal sidewalk's 4 feet. They've proposed to put a 6-foot sidewalk on one side. Part of our thoughts as we were in this discussion was runoff, water moving. What can we do with the design of this area to keep the water moving slowly? And that was one of the questions we had is, you've got these ditches, but you made the comment that when you have driveways going through them and you've got water going under them, you can, I think it was you who said you can size pipes to do things to hold water for very short periods of time nonetheless, but you can actually help to control the runoff by the design of these swales and
Correct.
driveways.
So, yes, essentially the curb is a mechanism to contain water and channelize it. And if we put curb in this section, you're going to collect the water faster. We're going to run it to the outlets faster. That's where you really push the limits of needing to retain and treat water. And if we decide to forego the curb, we're using the ditch system then as the collection point of the water. And we can control how fast that water leaves the ditch system by, now this is just examples, this isn't a hydraulic analysis by any means, but say that you normally would have a 18-inch culvert under a driveway. If you want to slow down the water, you use a slightly smaller pipe, say a 12-inch or something like that, so that water is allowed to build up, 6 inches or so in that ditch temporarily, and then as the water event goes away, that water actually then continues to flow through the system, but you're delaying the water a little bit, and that can be a way of enhancing the water quality treatment, and certainly by putting this water in the ditches, you're going to promote some more infiltration of the stormwater rather than collect it all at one big location. And that's in town, that's what we strive for. We do collect all the water, we do run it to isolated points, and in this development, that's a different focus if we don't go with the curb and gutter and so forth. So it's a different concept, but I think it enhances some of the drainage.
And like John had mentioned, we had approved 37 feet without curb and gutter before, but still it comes into the conversation of how do you slow the water down as best you can in other areas.
Where's the water retaining now? Even our car wash site had to retain their water. Where's this going? Where's the water from this?
Pull up there's one, in here, there's a spot that has some water retention facilities. We can pull that up and look at that while we're here. One of the reasons that we requested that the sidewalk be on the inside of this road was part of that, to keep, the more hard surface you have, the faster water runs off. That's why they've chosen to put that sidewalk on the inside of this development also.
I'm still not convinced on the single sidewalk. We have an ordinance in town that you have to have a sidewalk on both sides of the street. This is a development in the city of Watertown. I believe we need sidewalks on both sides of the street, like we agreed last meeting.
Those purple sites, is that what you're showing?
Yeah, Rhonda, that's what the water quality sites are. These are tentative sizes and be finalized in the final design to conform to treat all the areas that are paved. So,
You've got another diagram that has a bunch of arrows on it that shows the direction of the drainage, I believe. Could you?
That's what I was gonna ask, is we have, one of those maps shows exactly, due to the elevations, which way a lot of the water is draining up there.
Zoom in.
like the blue arrows that you see on this diagram there, that's where the drainage is proposed to go. On this might be the clearest drawing that you can see on it. And then we also have what we call inlet structures. They're kind of like drop inlets, but they don't have that, what we call a type B framing grate. This is more of a circle grate is what it is. That's going to be in a ditch. So, and then, we're going to have some storm sewer to handle that drainage.
Can
First
you,
to get it into the water quality ponds, and then control the storage for the outlet, for the outfall of the pipe.
can you back out of there a little bit? If you were to break that area down in sections, back out a little further, way further, so we can see the stuff on the top of the screen in Stony Point Drive. I assume that road is at a high point for everything from Stony Point Drive in the top cul-de-sac. Well, that's probably all draining toward the lake, I assume? Or is that draining toward the road?
Okay, you see that kind of gold
picture
line there.
that's got red arrows on it that shows the drainage flow.
Yeah, you can see that
Lot
gold line,
clearer
that's
than-
where kind of the summit.
Where's the summit is where?
On that last drawing, it was on that summit, right there. That gold line right there is,
So, okay, so everything where that arrow is will drain toward the road, everything on the outside will drain toward the lake.
and that's pretty close to what it is now.
In the southern area, everything again drains toward, I'd say toward the channel there then?
Yeah, it'll be dug out and it'll drain towards the channel, whereas before it used to drain into Conda's trees and out that direction. We're proposing to keep that completely away from there from the point.
That cul-de-sac area that we see right there, that drains toward,
That will drain
mostly toward the
mostly
channel?
towards, yeah. If you look at the arrows, you can see them.
So what is the capacity of your, I think it was D drainage area down there to the right? Will that handle an inch an hour, half an inch an hour? What are you estimating?
If you can see on the notes on the right-hand side, there we say drainage area B, drainage area C and D. You can see the total contributing area there, and then we have a listing of an impervious area, and then what the water quality is, so. And we would design the pipes to handle that water, so.
You know, Pat, can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
As a layperson and not an engineer myself, I absolutely have to trust our city engineers so that we know that this project is being done correctly. And I think we need to look at the city engineer and say, you know, Shane, give us your thoughts on this. Are you recommending this to the planning commission for approval, or are you asking them to not do something? But I think we ask a lot of questions here that we are not engineers on, and I think that you need to, as the city engineer, come forward and say, this is going to work or this isn't going to work. That's what I'm trying to hear here, rather than ask, I'm sorry, John, but to ask how much water is that retention pond going to hold. I don't know what it's going to hold. I have to trust the engineers that are designing this, and that's what I'm looking for. What is the city's position on this?
Well, our position, of course, is to make sure that we do what's in the best interest of the city. And then this is a unique subdivision. Without a doubt, we've never seen one of these brought forward to the city before. I personally have done a project similar to this when I was in consulting and didn't have any big issues with it. It is, if the engineer for the developer can provide, and really they are going to provide us the information on these water quality provisions. So I think in the final design, they're going to provide us the information and the calculations that adequately treats this water before it's released to the receiving waters, or in some cases the neighboring properties. But primarily this isn't going to reach the neighboring properties. It's mostly going to flow back into the lake areas. So water quality is important to me. Water storage is less important to me in this particular location because of its proximity to the lake. I mean, the water runs to the lake today, it's going to run to the lake tomorrow. As long as we treat that water on its way, and I think that, you know, the developer's engineer is going to be able to prove to us that he can do that. So I'm okay with it from that standpoint.
The problem I have with this is we are guessing that we can slow down the water enough, but if we get a big rain, how well are these ponds going to work? There's a lot of people fertilize their yard. They spray insecticide on their yard. This is going to run off. It's going to go into the channel. The channel goes right by one of the last best fish hatching areas on the lake. And is it going to adversely affect that fish hatchery area? And are we going to inadvertently disrupt, you know, the fish hatch in the lake? And is that going to affect, you know, fishing? And I have concern with that, and that's why I'm asking about this runoff. And I think we need to get it right, because once we damage one of the, you know, last month when we were here, they were saying, you know, they have a issue with this pond going right by the fish hatchery area. And if we screw it up now, we'll never be able to get it back.
And I agree, and to the mayor's point, I believe I asked a very similar question the last time we had this on the agenda, because clearly the overwhelming concern that I have been asked is, you know, the drainage, the water control, the impact on the lake, and from what I recall that you said last time, Shane, is that you feel comfortable that the ditch and drainage system would be appropriate, or at least equally as good or better than a curb and gutter with the unique topography of this particular piece of property. Is that correct?
Yes, I did say that at the last meeting, and I would stand here today with the same answer. The unique thing that we have to all understand is that the large rain event that happens, say, for instance, the rain event that happened in Sioux Falls that flooded a lot of areas earlier this year, there isn't a single water quality system or storage system that can handle that type of event. You can't afford to design for it. No, nobody can. So to expect the large rain event to be treated adequately is not practical in the municipal engineering realm. What you want to do is you want to catch, these water quality controls are to catch the everyday rains. You know, the acceptable range is in that 10 to 15 year design phase, and that's what we would expect the engineer to design for this thing. And the difference here than normal is we're not going to retain the water in a traditional way. We're going to put it in a ditch. It's going to take longer to get to the lake by having to go through a ditch rather than collect it in a curb and shove it into a pipe and have that pipe just dump it out like a garden hose into the lake and the surrounding areas. By putting it in the ditch, it's going to take longer to get to the ultimate outflow at the lake. And that's where I'm a little bit more comfortable saying that other things are happening with this water that helps treat it along the way before it gets to the lake without the bigger traditional storage ponds. I hope
And
that
realize
clarifies that.
we cannot design it for a deluge, and that's not what my point is. My point is, as a layperson, I don't know how big a pond will hold how much water. And so my question was, are we talking a half-inch rain, are we talking an inch rain, or are we talking a drizzle? I don't know what these ponds will hold, and I was trying to get somebody to tell me, you know, what can we expect out of this?
I don't really have the number for the rainfall on this right off the top of my head here, but I think you're looking at a pretty quick rain that happens in 15 minutes. I'm thinking around about 2 3/4 inches. And that's just a 2-year storm runoff. Now, if you're looking at a 100-year, you're talking in the realm of close to 8 CFS, or, you know, or 8 inches, I should say, of rain. So in a 24-hour period. So there's the difference there. So, and that's what that boils down to. And basically, these water quality ponds are all sized to capture the 2-year or that first runoff that comes off of the concrete and impervious areas into these ponds. And we got a storage there to handle that. And these ponds, when they get to be this size, you don't see a real fast flow through them like a ditch. It's more of a settling basin is what it boils down to. Then over and above that, that's where your 5-year storm is what they call that. And that's about close to a 4-inch rain in 15 minutes. Okay. And what that boils down to then is that all these pipes and stuff will be sized for a 5-year storm, basically. And then from that, I would furnish the city all the computations for that, and then you would look at a 100-year storm to see what the impact is. If we need to increase the pipe size to handle that, or to accommodate that without doing any damage to the adjacent properties, we would do that at that point. So that's kind of the background to that information there.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And you know, what we try to do is be as good as stewards to the lake and the community as we can, but if you put it in perspective as to how we gather water and what we do with it in the city of Watertown, southwest part of town, southeast part of town, we stick it in a pipe, we run it down a gutter, we stick it in a pipe, and we dump it into the Sioux River completely untreated, correct? If you drive behind the mall sometime and take a look at what we put in the Sioux River to send to Brookings.
Yeah, correct. And you know, you're delivering the water slower to the lake, I guess is my ultimate point with the ditch system. And you're allowing portions of that water, especially on the early part of each rain phase, to actually infiltrate into the ground, soak into the ground before it even outlets. On a small rain in a drier year, there might not hardly be any water that gets out of the ditch and into the water quality pond. It's all gonna soak in before it even gets there.
And that was John's concern, is, you know, fertilizers, things like that.
Yeah, and
Anywhere around the lake that happens, when anyone puts fertilizer on, it's gonna leach in, certain types of chemicals will leach in. You hope you can put, that it's going through ditches, it's going through vegetation, it's going through sand and soil to try to leach some of that out of there.
correct.
And I realize that's what happens today. Some of the stuff goes directly into the river, but that doesn't mean we have to compound the mistakes of the past.
And I agree, and I think like John said, that wetland protection is extremely important to that lake, which is a resource for Watertown, both recreationally and in the area. One of the other things we talked about was lot size. Can you point out, Jeff, those 4 lots on the bottom were a concern to me, that they were fairly, you know, they weren't, I didn't buy that they were real nice sized rural-like lots. They've modified the size of those lots. I believe there was a lot up on the lakeside that was also modified up there. That was a concern that I'd say a response I got back from some of the board, that I felt that we didn't really consider those as much of rural lots as they were booked to be. The wetland, we had talked about that, and I've talked to Game Fish and Parks, and I've talked to the city. It still would have to go through the board, but they'd be willing to, correct me if I'm wrong, gift block 3 to the city of Watertown, so the city can then lease that to Isaac Walton League or something like that in lieu of park dedication. I did talk to Game Fish and Parks yesterday from Pier, and they said, you know, in lieu of park dedication, that's as good a buy as Watertown's ever got on as far as what that does for the fish habitat and the bait fish. You know, because I made the comment to him when I talked to him, I said, well, you know, we normally take that money and use it to build a park or put it in our park budget. And he said, you're getting well more value out of owning that wetland than you would ever get out of putting the money in the park budget. The last item that we talked about was that channel as to where it was going to come in. And Jeff, you can help me there. My concern is if that channel comes in from the north, and I'm going to refer to it as the Stella May channel if you point right there. My fear was, and if you can put up the aerial photo, my fear is if that, again, in protection of that wetland, if that channel, if we dumped that, put your pointer right there, we get a strong wind, a sustained wind out of the north. Can you blow it up a little bit? Yep. I want to show how small that section, a little more, blow up one more time. Now go down to, right, move your pointer. They wanted to come in right through this area here. My fear is that if they dig that channel out to the north, we get a north wind. Those waves are going to come in there and blow the backside of that wetland completely out of there. And then you're going to get silt and sand that's going to pour into the Hidden Valley Channel. There's really not that much, you know, right south of that pointer there. There's, you know, below that, there's not a lot. My fear is the wave action that could come through there could send those reeds right down the Hidden Valley Channel, and now we have 2 openings into the lake with a little island on the end, and I didn't think that was fair to the Hidden Valley side and the wetland. But so that's where we sat. I've talked to most of you guys on the board. if we would consider looking at those, and most of you said you would consider looking at it. So here we sit. When I talked to some of the people from Hidden Valley, can you put the one up that shows the channel for Stony Point, where the finger is? I call it a finger that goes through there.
Yeah.
Okay, see put your pointer right on the end of that finger. Right there, that's a finger that goes out that's going to have a cement structure on the channel side of it. The Hidden Valley question was why don't you just extend that finger right around so that way you protect the wetland. The issue with that is the high water mark. You can't build it past the high water mark. So correct me if I'm wrong, that's as far as you could legally put that berm there. Even if you wanted to, you can't wrap it around there.
The Corps would have to give you approval to do that.
Right, because it's below, you don't own that land. It's below the high water mark. It's no different than if you tried to build a peninsula out in the lake from someone's house. You can't do that. So the question is are we better off to enter this channel through Hidden Valley as far as protection of the wetland? Some of the Hidden Valley landowners' question was, hey, everything that floats into Hidden Valley washes up on a couple people's seawall. And I said I would assume that the HOA or the homeowners association, the Stony Point Channel Association would participate in the operation and maintenance of a portion of the Hidden Valley Channel, meaning when reeds break off, one of the examples was, hey, one of the owners there took 6 trailer loads of reeds that he dug off his seawall because the wind came in, tore out some reeds and washed them up in front of his house. So these guys had said, yeah, we would assume if we were using that channel, we would share in the operation and maintenance of that. And I assumed our attorney could make sure that the agreement was sound when the time would come. Secondly,
Pat,
I
would
think that
that
was it.
be, would that be cemented then?
I-
What's the plan on that? Or you really do have to try to protect all that ground up in there. How do you do that?
What's the
Where are you
finger?
talking about
What's that finger that comes out there? That has the wetland on the back side of it. What's that going to be made of on each side? I think I asked the question of what material is the channel side of it going to, the Stony Point channel side going to be made of? And I think the answer was concrete, much like the Hidden Valley side.
We're looking at concrete, possibly concrete block.
What's on the back side that borders the wetland?
We're not going to touch it.
So that would be natural. That
Yeah.
would be in its
Yeah.
natural state that it is. You'd put concrete out to the end of that finger right there. It will have to have you come up so it's recorded so people at home can see.
I'm confused what you're saying. Right here, you said this cannot be above the high water mark?
Correct. It was my understanding that you can only build to the high water mark.
You have to mitigate the difference with the
So
Corps.
what is this? Is this at the high water mark here?
That's above the high water mark there.
So then why couldn't, and this is gonna be a berm?
It is a berm.
It is a berm.
Yeah, it is right now. It's not part of the wetland right now.
Okay, but you're gonna have cement right here, right?
Yep,
And cement here,
yep.
all the way up here.
That was the plan, yeah.
So if that were turned and go up there, why wouldn't that be just as easy to do that? And then if that cement were there, the waves wouldn't come through here.
You still got
You wouldn't have that washing through there.
the wave action coming out of there, out of the north.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen that hitting down there,
Oh,
but I
yeah.
mean, it hits pretty strong. Any concrete hit go right over the top of that too, so it'd be a mess doing it that way too. If you look at it,
So you're gonna stop the cement right out in the middle of the rushes
we'll come on around and it'll be cemented up there. Now
to here,
yeah,
and then,
you'll have to tell me on the Corps. I don't know how you have that designed, so he's got the application in with the
Yeah, Uh,
Corps, so.
what we did is, just the sides of the channel is gonna be concrete, not the bottom, just the sides. And it's wrapped around, kind of following the middle of that coming to the Hidden Valley there.
here,
No, it doesn't go up that far, it kind of wraps
what
around,
is
because
this? What is this blue line here? Is that?
that would
concrete?
be the lot line.
That's a lot
And then if you come from the north, then you would more than likely would not need the concrete wall on the west side as you head north, as you go north there, other than just wherever you bridge across that crossing right there.
What
to
I'm
the-
asking though is if they came through here, which I think most of us over here like to see that done, and you bring up the point that that would wash this out, with the waves. I don't know if you ever been in Hidden Valley very much, but I'll tell you one thing, we don't get waves in here. There are no waves. Even on the strongest, we get the right direct wind here, we'll get a few over here. And that, and we know that most of the wind comes from this direction. I
But-
give that to you, more so than it comes from this direction. But if that were wrapped around here,
But that's exactly why that offers more protection for the whole area going, cutting to the south and going around it. Because you don't get it.
I like your project, but I'm only concerned about that, going through those rushes, and I think I can speak for everybody at Hidden Valley, which we've discussed before, Bob.
Sure.
But my thought was, looks to me like you have just as much cement and work to go that way, and if it were there,
But we would,
with the high water mark,
but we would fight the same thing that you're talking about. As soon as you cut that out, just like that is where the Stella Meg channel used to be, and it fills back in, it's gonna be a constant battle with that filling back in. Whereas if you go around the end, it offers protection for that whole area.
but we have.
And
that-
we're willing to share in the cost of taking care of it. I just,
We have
you
to
know.
dredge this out.
Yeah, and we're willing to share in that. That's, you know,
Okay, well,
you know.
it's a concern.
Yeah, that was, the concept is what's the easiest way? The water's actually public. You can come in through there. The ground underneath it is privately owned. And the concept is does the Stony Point Channel have its own access? Hidden Valley has their own access. Everybody takes care of their own. What's in the best interest of the wetland? Most of the people I've talked to said best interest of the wetland is just to have one access into the lake and share the operation and maintenance of it. So that's where it was. The Stony Point development is willing to participate in the operation and maintenance of that Hidden Valley channel. The continuing the finger out and up, I've been told a couple different times that it's not a feasible option because the water will come over the top of it and chew it out of there, and before you know it, you've got an island with an access on each side. Anything I've missed that what I did is I went through the resolutions we approved, and the resolutions are there, and they were virtually identical. With the changes in this plat had to do with lot size, 6-foot cement sidewalk on one side of the road rather than a 4-foot sidewalk on both sides. The advantage of this, my concern was with that trail was you're willing to put in a 6-foot cement sidewalk at the time that the road is put in, so it's complete, versus 4-foot sidewalks on both sides of the road that they're put in at the time a building permit is pulled for those individual lots. So the sidewalk for this entire area is 100% complete when the last lot is developed, and not a day before that. So the trade-off, in my opinion, was we get a trail, we get to say where the trail was. The adjacent landowner preferred the sidewalk on the inside of the road rather than both sides of the road. So the difference on the plat, so we can move forward, is 6-foot cement sidewalk on one side of the road, 30-foot road with no curb and gutter. Wetland, we would put that in a resolution that would be gifted to the city in lieu of park dedication. Lot sizes were changed, that's on the plat. So most of it is actually on the plat, not in the resolutions, correct, Jeff? I didn't see anything in the resolution that says that I'd like something to be added, some verbiage to be added that in regard to the upkeep and maintenance of between the Hidden Valley Association and the Stony Point Association in regard to the upkeep and maintenance of the channel that they would be sharing, because that's what the proposal shows.
Also, too, item 9 on their new proposal is quite a bit different than what we agreed to.
No building permit, yeah, and that's one thing I had marked on mine. No building permits will be issued until the road is platted.
You said until the road is constructed.
Right, and because our feelings were, we want, we don't care if the road has a timeline as to when it needs to be paved, but our concern was that the road is constructed. We don't issue, and I'd like to take that one just a step further. Not only are no building permits issued until the road is platted, we wanted the road constructed.
It doesn't necessarily have to be paved, but it should be
Gravel,
so they can
usable
use
from
that
the
for
south.
access.
And my question there, to take it a step further, what I meant by there is, no building permit should be issued, but you can start moving dirt on lots without building permits being issued. And that was my fear, is that these lots get sold and all of a sudden people are moving dirt and doing dirt work, still haven't pulled a building permit. Do they need to move dirt on a lot? Do you need a fill permit or what's the permit?
Yeah, a grading permit would.
So I would say no permits are required until that road is constructed. Otherwise, we're gonna have people using
Well-
the access road getting up there.
Pat, it's
Or no
likely
permits are allowed.
that would include a grading permit just to get that road built. So that'll probably be addressed first thing.
If
Well,
I
my
might-
fear
if
is
I
that we don't
might-
inundate the small access road we
Well,
have.
if I might, that we're going to put the road in.
And I know that was your,
Even rough
your
it right
concern
away,
is
I mean,
how,
you have to
how
have a
soon
way.
can I put the road in? And we
Exactly.
said, you gotta come to us
That's part
But
of
the
phase
object
one
is you don't use a
anyway.
20-foot
What's
wide
that?
easement
That's
to
part
run
of
heavy
phase one
equipment.
anyway.
Okay.
So,
The object of that was so that you don't use a 20-foot wide easement to run all the heavy equipment in and out and the cement trucks in and out. We'd like you to build that road and have the access for the construction materials.
And I agree with you, John, that we want to have that road in for that too, so. It's a lot easier coming from the south,
I guess the only concern I'm going to go back to, and I've come back to it every time you've been up here, is that commercial lot up there. We're making a narrow street, and we have a commercial lot at the very point. If I could put a stipulation on a condo and said, okay, the day that you sell that road going to the east has got to be standard city, 37 with curb and gutter, Rhonda'd be happy. But we've got a commercial lot up there. And if this was in any other part of town, we would be saying, why would we change the rules now?
I agree.
Yeah, I think the road width is a concern for me, for the point that Rhonda made, as well as the fact that the 37-foot wide road with curb and gutter, you may have the same amount of asphalt, but people park on that, the cemented part of the curb, and 30-foot wide road only works if we assume that people are going to park, on the grass. I'm not entirely comfortable with that.
Yeah, the thing is about those commercial lots that are up there, as far as development, they basically all have to come back to you to assign a use to them anyway,
Well, I understand that, but is that fair to that next developer to say, now we have to go back to our rules saying, now you have to put curb and gutter in, but we didn't make them do it here?
Well, what I'm saying is on those particular lots, they were commercial before, that's why I left them that way. They are, chances are that they won't be developed commercially unless there's an access to the east. And that, if that doesn't happen, it's probably not gonna happen, so, and it just doesn't, it needs,
That's
there
my
needs
point.
to be a flow through.
So
to
how am
make
I
that-
gonna straight
so
face-
Otherwise, so otherwise, it'll end up being residential or
Well,
that type of thing.
and I appreciate that, but how are we supposed to sit here straight-faced and
I-
say,
I know-
now
I
you have to
understand
put curb and gutter, we're back to making somebody else hold their hand to the fire, but we didn't here? That's my point. That's where this board is going to eat crow someday, is that we are letting it slide now, and with a commercial lot stuck right in the middle of it. And someday, I don't know, maybe I'm out of line, but that's exactly how I see it, is we're taking a step back, and then someday, somebody else is gonna come with a commercial lot and want the same thing.
Put a provision in for adequate parking or whatever that you have to have for commercial lots, if it's developed commercially. I'm just saying, because they're a deep lot, you would put the parking on the lots anyway, so if you developed them.
And what Rhonda says, and that's what we do, is we We always, and I told you guys, I said, I know you've got the greatest of intentions. I know what you're thinking, but we go worst case scenario. You know, we assume those R3 lots are going to be built at maximum capacity, and we're going to have the maximum conditional use on those. And I know, yeah, I know it's the nature of the beast. Any other questions for Bob while he's up here?
To Shane's point earlier. Shane, you brought that up earlier about the no parking on one side of the road. I mean, is that something that we want to discuss further as a potential?
You know, I think what Blake's question is if you went, you know, we approved 37 feet without curb and gutter, a narrower road without any, with no parking on one side. Any appetite for that? I'm looking to the left and right. Stonebarger says no. You know, that's the tough one.
Okay, I just want to make this a comment that really one of the main reasons that we get concerned about minimum road widths and paths is to provide emergency access to that. So fire trucks and ambulances don't have to encounter or move cars to proceed down the road. And if we do decide that we're not comfortable with parking on both sides, I think and I'm not trying to put words in Chip's mouth, but I think all along that's been one of his things is if, as a compromise, maybe if we limited parking to one side of the road, then he would be much more comfortable with that type of
You know, this goes back to where
access
we try to
scenario.
weigh into our engineering department as to what you guys think. Is 37 wider than it needs to be in this application? But we can also ask Chip. You know, that's probably where we're struggling the most is the road width. You know, we do have city standards that say a 37-foot road with curb and gutter, and we paint everything with the same brush, and that's what we use in a city environment. This is slightly different. It's not a 2-acre per lot rural environment. It's a hybrid of something in between. Enlighten us from the city side what you...
Yeah, okay, Chip Pramus, Watertown Fire Prevention Officer. And Shane's exactly right, the road width standards are based on for emergency situations, be it storms, to get a fire, to get ambulance, rescue trucks to certain areas. And there's stipulations in the code book exactly for when the road is 30 to 32 inches, that you put a no parking fire lane on one side, and then you have enough working room for public traffic, and then if there's an emergency situation to get vehicles in and out, the emergency vehicles. And these lots are large enough, it's kind of deceiving, they're large enough where when you have no parking on one side, there's plenty of room on the other side to park wherever you need it for off-street parking. So, the fire department feels comfortable with, parking on one side in a 30-foot wide road.
It makes our job a lot easier if, in a case like that, before we go out and approve a road smaller than what our code says, we look at why we have the code. So you're basically saying if you go anything less than 30 feet, you've got to restrict parking to one side.
Less than 32, then, yeah, you have to. And you put the no parking fire lane on one side.
And that was the Hidden Valley people. Their road would be smaller than this, but that was one of the statements we got last time is that when there's special activities going on those roads, they get kind of tough to go through. Now, their proposal with 30 feet gives them a little more room. What's your thought on, from a developer engineering, personal engineering side? Are you okay if a person went 30 feet with parking on, with no parking on one side?
With the size of these lots, from our standpoint, that's not an issue.
Similar to, we do have that in areas of Watertown where we have lots of areas that have no parking on one side of the road, especially if there's, the emergency snow routes is where I seem to see a lot of those, but.
And there are some, recent developments up on 16th there where they put some signage up because, they wanted a smaller road. And, we required them to place a sign up there so people don't park there, and we have working room for emergency vehicles. So we have done it recently in the past like this, so. And those were 22 feet, I think, is what they went with. For the cost of the asphalt too was part of it. We tried to work with everybody.
What are the size of the roads out in Willow Creek development? Do you know, Shane? There's R3 out there, there's substantial vehicles gonna be out there.
Yeah, there's a couple things that came forward, I assume through this board previously, that had a plan that did call for narrower streets than 37 feet. And I believe the way that was addressed too was the restricted parking on one side of the road. And I think, and Jeff will have to help me on that, I think that was a 32-foot wide street.
I don't know off the top of my head for sure, but I do know that parking was restricted to one side only. I don't know the exact measurement right now, though.
My name is Mike Lawrence. I used to sit on the board, and this project's, I have clients that are looking at properties that would like to build up here, $500,000 homes. And I've discussed with them most of the things that we're discussing tonight. I'm an avid golfer. I'm out at the country club at least 2-3 nights a week. I take the 22-foot road to get out there. I take the 22-foot road to get to the prop on my way home. I see people parking on the 22-foot road every time. Another thing is a sidewalk on one side. That's something that the people that are building up there, the property owners that are adjacent to it, want that. A 4-foot sidewalk's great for one person walking down, but if two ladies want to go on a walk together, it's not the best case scenario. It's like a bike path is a lot better than a sidewalk to take anything but a single person and a baby stroller down. That was one of the things I noticed. As far as the density of the R3, if you look at South Lake Drive and those 25-foot, 35-foot, 50-foot, those lots down there that are really close, high density, and we're making that traffic work with a 22-foot road. The density there. As far as the commercial, when the commercial comes before you guys, you have to make those parking requirements. They're in the commercial code. In the R3, they're in the R3 code. Those parkings have to be taken care of when the buildings go up. Putting the building on there and saying, well, there's not going to be enough parking or whatnot, that's not fair to say because we don't know what's going up there, A, and B, that parking we already have established in the code. That property, if anything's built on those lots, that property has to sustain that parking. So I think this is a great property. I like the size of the lots. I think there's a lot of need for this, higher end lots. I think these are going to be some beautiful houses up there. I just wanted to put that out there and let you guys know.
Thank you. Is anyone else here to speak on behalf or against the?
Just for the record, I'm not worried about the commercial parking. I'm worried about the traffic back and forth.
There was one other discussion we had, and I think I had it with Bob and your group. I know I had it with the Hidden Valley. I said that we thought it would only be fair that the Stony Point development share in the operation and maintenance of their portion of the Hidden Valley channel that they use. There was one other thing with that, and the Hidden Valley people that I visited with had a question, and it was an area of expertise that none of us, I guess Ron actually had, but we don't, and it has to do with the obstruction of the Hidden Valley channel while your channel is being built. And when I talked to you guys, we said, hey, these guys, when they dig this channel, they're going to dig it from their side, and when they get in to those wetlands, there's permitting that has to be done for that. And they're not going to, what our goal was is not to obstruct the Hidden Valley access to the people that are there. And the people from Hidden Valley that I spoke with said, we're okay with that. And I said, I don't think they'd have a problem as long as it's supervised by our city attorney as to if in fact a cofferdam of some sort needs to be put over that Hidden Valley area that would obstruct those residents from using that, it would be done at a time of year when they're not using it. September, October, after Labor Day, and the agreement would come between Stony Point and Hidden Valley, supervised by our own attorney, kind of mediated by our attorney.
Coffer dams would have to be built, Pat, to build that wall in the water, so it would have to be dry.
Yeah,
You know, so, I mean, relatively.
yeah, and what their concern was is, hey, we know that as you reach in toward the Hidden Valley, there could possibly be a requirement that where Hidden Valley goes into the lake is not mitigated, but something is put there, and they didn't want something put there the week of 4th of July, or and I said, I'm sure they'll be conscientious as to when, if there's ever an intrusion in there, of when and where it would be. And I didn't think it would be troubling to have something drawn up between the two of you, and the city attorney would, I asked him if he'd supervise it, and he said he didn't have a problem with it. So, anyone else here to speak in regard to this? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Just to recap for us, I visited with Blake a little bit here as we're talking to make sure we don't miss anything. We now have a resolution before us with 15 items on it. Item number 16 I'd like to add to that resolution is the wetland will be, in lieu of park dedication, the wetland will be, what's the correct verbiage, Stanton, deeded, given to the city?
Yeah, conveyed to the city.
The wetland will be, which is block 3, will be conveyed to the city in lieu of park dedication, subject to the approval of the park board. Item 17 would be that there would be an agreement between the Hidden Valley Association and what I'm going to call the Stony Point Association in regard to the operation and maintenance of the Hidden Valley side of the channel. We also would want, I'm going to say item number 18 would be an item added to the resolution in regard to at what time, in the event that the Hidden Valley channel would have to be, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want any intrusion from their ingress and egress of use of that channel.
At no point will access, or there be any obstruction to access to from the Hidden Valley channel.
At certain time periods, knowing that they may, when these permits are issued, they may be required to have some blockage of that. I want the Hidden Valley Association to have a say in when and where that's going to be, so that somebody doesn't come in and limit their access to their channel.
Are you proposing any time the water is open that it not be obstructed, or?
No, I mean there may be a time that when they go in there, but I'd prefer it be late. It'd be late in the season, so that we don't want to. And when I talked to the developers, they said as this goes through, they'll time. They don't have an issue with timing that for when it's the least obstructive, or least amount of heartache for them. The areas that we talked about were lot size, that's included in the plat. The sidewalk that's being proposed is included in the plat, not necessarily an item on the resolution. The sidewalk is maintained by the homeowners association. That was a question we had. The road on the wetland donation to the city, that was added to the resolution. The legal talks on the channel. The only thing that I have a feel out there is where are we on this road? Because when we vote on this, it's yay or nay. So, the question is the motion that's made is going to have, if the road is greater than 30 feet, it's going to have to made in the motion. The resolution we're going to vote on, you've made the adjustments to it.
Before I have you sign it, I'll
Make
listen
sure
to
it's
the
right.
minutes and
So when we make a vote, we're voting on Resolution 2015-38, which includes the lot size changes, the sidewalk adjustment, the road reduction from 37 to 30, unless that's changed in the motion. It'll include in the resolution the addition of the wetland donation to the city, an agreement with two agreements with Hidden Valley, one for the operation and maintenance of the channel, and one for the obstruction of the channel during construction as to when and where that would reasonably happen. That'll be supervised by the city attorney. Am I missing anything?
The parking for one side, on, was that?
You know, that's you know, that's in the road, you know. We don't like to, we don't like to, you try to, you know, I think we're down to, on the road size, either 37 feet or 30 feet with parking on one side. It's
Okay.
whoever makes the motion is going to get to lobby that.
I think I'll make that motion with a road size of 30 feet with parking on one side. I don't care which.
So Blake's motion is to approve the approve the plan as seen with the adjustments to the resolution that we talked about, with a 30-foot road rather than with the 30-foot road included in the plan with parking on one side. Which side of that parking will be, Shane, who normally chooses which side they park on? Is that a safety committee? Is that the city engineer? Is that a discussion between the developer and the engineering office?
I think the engineering and fire officials would determine
So we would
that.
assume it's a 30-foot road with parking on one side, and that determine as to which side will be between the,
Probably the opposite side of the fire hydrants.
That's exactly what I was just
Okay.
gonna say.
okay. And one other thing is that I did mention that in their original plan, that road through the middle there was going to be a gravel access road. The developers have agreed to move a manhole that was in the middle of that road that would then allow them to make that a grass. It would have a hard surface under it, but it could be grass. The emergency personnel would all know it's there, but the idea is if it was a gravel road that crossed through there, people would continue to use it and then cross through the adjacent landowner's property. The thought is, hey, are you willing to move a manhole so this could be grass and not be as intrusive on the adjacent landowner? And they agreed to that just for that. So that's the motion we have on the table by Mr. Dolly. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. McGuire. Further discussion?
I just wanted to, if we compare the 37-foot road, and we're talking a 7-8-foot vehicle like we discussed earlier, so if we have parking only on one side of a 30-foot, we're really looking at the same usable space for traffic flow there. And I think that's going to be, if we got parking on one side, we still have ample room for parking on the street.
I think it's substandard, and I don't think that's the type of developments we want to have in our community.
I'm concerned about the 30-foot road width with the parking or no parking on one side. Some of the concerns that have been expressed before at prior meetings is again, the experiences of other similar parts of town as far as ingress and egress, and this is even more limited than a typical development relative to ingress and egress, and the whole commercial portion of the plat up there. I just I'm not feeling all that comfortable about 30-foot road.
I feel comfortable with it because, like you said, it's comparing to what he just said, that it's gonna be probably apples to apples if there was parking on one side of the road. As long as the fire department can get through there, that's was my biggest concern, garbage trucks and ambulance and so forth, so.
Rhonda, your thoughts?
I think you heard my thoughts earlier. I've been the same sounding bell since this started. So, sorry.
Blake, do you want to leave your motion with a 30-foot road parking on one side, or do you want to
I
change
think,
it?
hearing the thoughts of the rest of the board, I'd like to amend that motion to a 37-foot.
So to review it, we're gone from lot size sidewalks. The road, Blake would like to change his motion to 37 feet, parking on both sides of the road. And so what I'll need is that's Blake's motion. Jason, you made the second. Are you willing to amend your second?
Yeah, I'll amend my
Okay, so the motion and second was amended. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Go ahead.
Could we have the option of sidewalks in that case?
Sidewalks on both sides of the road rather than 6 feet on one?
Just as an option along with the 5-foot trail.
Yeah, I think what we'd have to do is modify the resolution to give the developer the option of, Bob, I'm right here, to give you the option of one or the other. So I think we'd probably want to amend the resolution to maybe leave it up to your discretion if the board's okay with that, to do one or the other.
City council, anything that goes to the plan commission goes to the city council for final approval. If we, what Stanton's, what the developer has asked is, we've now said he needs a 37-foot road without curb and gutter. He had agreed to put a 6-foot walking trail on one side of the road. He's asked if he could go to a more stringent decision requirement, which would be a 4-foot sidewalk on each side of the road versus 6 feet on one, which is a stronger ruling than the 6 feet on one side.
I think maybe the simplest thing for the minutes would be for Blake to ask for his previous motion to be withdrawn and Mr. McGuire okay as the seconder, and then allow Blake to make a new motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to withdraw my previous motion then.
Second by Mr. McGuire. So the modified motion would be as his original motion with the developer's option of putting 4-foot sidewalk on each side or a 6-foot sidewalk on one side. Follow me?
Yep.
Another point of clarification. The road to the south. The road to the south going across Mr. Arnold's property.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted the smaller road, the 30-foot, because his pond is right over here. If you can.
Yep, I am.
And so he wanted this is about 37 feet right across here, and with the trail, and with the other, you have to fill in more of his pond. And so he wanted the 30-foot road to come on up through here. Because he doesn't want to fill in half his pond.
I think the idea is, does that change any of your minds that? And I would say it doesn't change any of their minds. So Blake, the amended, he withdrew his motion, re-amended it to say the developer's option is 6-foot sidewalk on one side or 4-foot sidewalks on both, and that will be at his discretion. Do I have a second by Mr. McGuire? Second by Mr. McGuire. Any other discussion on that?
Now, how does that, first of all, to state the obvious, that it has to be one or the other for the entire development, not
Correct.
part sidewalk and part
Correct.
trail. And how does that impact Mr. Munger's property north of that already has the sidewalk? Because they would need to, both do the same thing then.
His is in it on its own. I mean, right now.
But that one already has a sidewalk requirement, correct?
Mhm.
And the idea, then we were talking in the trail, was that there.
He would incorporate into the trail. Now, this particular development is going to be at the discretion. The difference is with a 6-foot sidewalk, it's put in with the road. With a 4-foot sidewalk, it's put in at the property owner's expense rather than the developer's expense at the time of development of that lot.
Right, all I'm saying, again, just want to make sure that we're all clear on this, that.
They're going to have to put their own sidewalk in
Right,
if he
and they
doesn't
need to
put it in
coordinate
for
that,
them.
as to say, if Mr.
Yep.
Munger goes ahead and develops his property and puts
Mhm.
sidewalk in, then that's going
Yep.
to,
Yeah.
be consistent with what we're now granting the opportunity for Mr. Drake to decide which way he wants to go.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Mr. Drake was going to put in that sidewalk for him. I don't think he is now. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6, Old Business East Park Edition, Jeff?
I'm gonna let Shane take this one.
Excuse me. This is just for information and update on impacts to previous preliminary plan discussions that the Plan Commission had entertained earlier. In a previous motion, the Plan Commission asked for this access onto Willow Creek Drive for 8th Avenue to follow the traffic impact study that was being done by the developer, Coho, and also had input from the DOT. Several things have changed in that recommendation. Originally, they talked about a 700-foot access point from 212 to the north. That was a recommendation, and then that recommendation was amended to be 550 feet. So we had that brought to the Coho developers for their review and consideration, and they chose to not amend their access point onto Willow Creek Drive, but that decision, and we as staff actually reviewed this in great detail to see how that impact compared to the area to the south of 212. So essentially, what the engineering and Coho has asked for is same as what's happening south. If this is Highway 212 here, there's a center median similar to the one on the north side. That median is 440 feet long. The nearest entrance for paving on the south side is 478 feet long. One recommendation previously was that this driveway be closed, and that subsequently did not happen. And that was 152 feet to that first entrance. Comparing that on the north side, the center median on the north side is 430 feet, which is only 10 feet shorter than the one on the south side, and the location of the entrance is 465 feet to the proposed connection to Willow Creek. So we felt that what the developer and their engineer proposed was very consistent with what we saw happening on the south side of the highway. So that made us much more comfortable in now not requesting that this be relocated. So this is mostly information for you, and I know that traffic impact study has never been finalized, so that really hasn't been finished. And I am notifying the DOT on this information that we have here and getting them up to speed on that. So with that, you will see, and Lot 6 right here, in the interest of time, because this has gotten drug out for a considerable amount of time, will be administratively platted. Following the platting, we're going to do we're proposing, or the developer's proposing actually, H lot for incorporating the right-of-way through this development. And the reason for that is because the Watertown Development Company is the ones that are actually financing this upfront, and then ultimately the city will get it back. But that needs to be transferred so we can proceed with the contracts that have been written for that street improvements. Is that correct, Stan?
Taking a quick step back, Shane, this plat that we're looking at, we've approved this plat?
Nope, this is not.
Okay, so this is what they're gonna come to us
nope,
with, is the plat.
This will come to you. It hasn't come to you yet.
Where are
This is
we
ju-
at on
this is-
26th Street? There's no, the question is, we've had the discussion before as to how wide is 26th Street gonna be? Is there a stoplight or not? And that would have an effect as to, were we gonna be okay with 26th Street going straight or wrapping
Okay.
around?
Now-
Not really necessary yet?
Now, we've had our discussion with the DOT, and they are not going to stand in our way of having a street connection at 26th Street.
How many stoplights are we gonna have on 212 more are there gonna be then?
That will be determined in the future.
You know, right now, I want to step in on this a little
Yep,
bit
fine.
because I've been so close to this project and I kind of know the ins and outs of it. 26th Street is going to be as wide as 23rd Street. The DOT requests that it's the width of 26th and 23rd will be identical. There is stoplights going to be on 23rd Street. We asked them to put it on 26th Street. They said that it's not required at this particular time. They want to know in future years when this gets developed, if we need stoplights, there will be stoplights put in. But at this particular time, the DOT does not request that.
Though we have to prove that we need it before they're
It has
going to
be
invest
proven.
in it.
Yep, that's exactly right. Now, when you look at, and Shane talked a little bit about the length of the road, the access point on the 465 feet to the north there. You know, if you look between the two, between Walmart going in, the traffic that goes into that particular street and the traffic that will go into this particular avenue on 8th Avenue, we would expect it'll be substantially less. There's only 3 feet difference on the two when it comes to point there. The one down there, the block 6, is Travis Utney's. He wants to get going on that. We have the heights of the road. We understand what the heights are on 26th. We know 8th Avenue. What will be done is the administratively approved that will have the heights. He needs to get his footings in by November 1st. He wants to get building on that yet this fall. Another thing that we need to do, why that it's administratively approved, is actually so that Travis can get the property bought. He cannot buy it until it's actually been platted legally and recorded. So really, any questions you've got, you can certainly ask me, but 26th Street, the one right by the pool cue there, I don't know what you call it really, but it looks like pool cue. That is going to be the same width as 23rd Street, which is over to the left on Endress's. We're going to be putting in more culverts. The current culvert system on it right now is too narrow. It will be expanded, and it will actually hold the cars coming in from the right, the cars from the left. There'll be turning lanes on that. We will not mess with Highway 212 for any turning lanes.
Okay, I got 2 questions. When you were talking about 700 feet on Willow Creek Drive, was that with a 45-mile-an-hour speed zone, and then the reduced distance would knock it down to a 35-mile-an-hour speed zone?
That is the plan, is that it'll be 45 miles an hour for a while until actually 26th, and we've got plans on 26 how that will come up through the north. It won't be a straight shot north, so that traffic will slow down there coming down. But you're absolutely right. It'll be 45 for a time and then reduced to 35 because we really don't want that high speed of traffic coming down in there.
And second question is, with the state highway, do we have like an option? I personally, I would not like to see 2 stoplights on Highway 212 installed there. And I just, one would be fine, but to me, it'd make more sense on 26th after it's developed, but do we have any options there?
We don't have an option on that. In fact, we've made that suggestion that we think 26th is substantially more important than 23rd on the light. They have granted the 23rd Street access already for the lights because they say that the truck traffic will go down south, which picks up onto 20th Avenue. So they are blinded by even asking them to move 23rd to 26th. They say they will not do it.
And to state the obvious, as Chris said earlier, where this access comes on to Willow Creek, that is after the median, right? Where the median is.
Yeah, that one that you made, Jeff, it's a little bit misleading because it's got that arrow there. That is not correct. It's beyond that.
Right.
Yeah.
This endpoint of the red line basically is the bottom edge of the road will be to the north of that.
Is there going to be a turning lane for traffic northbound to turn left there?
I didn't follow your question.
It's 4 lanes now. I suppose that, they will use the 1 lane that goes over there.
Right, yeah, correct. So I wanted to give you this information because even though this isn't the correct plat, I wanted you to know that one of these lots will be administratively platted, and I wanted you to know that the remainder of this plat will be revised and brought to you at a future date, potentially the October meeting for consideration of the plat and on the rest of it. So I just want to give you an update before you saw the administrative plat and the H lot, and to give you some idea what considerations and work went into these decisions.
Thank
When
you.
will that be done for Trav? So he can get going on that? When will that plating be done?
We're working on it to get it done as soon as possible, and I would hope that we'll be completing it next week.
Sounds good, thank you. Any new business, Jeff?
No.
Nothing for executive session. I need a motion and a second to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. McGuire. Second by Mrs. Johnson. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.